Lindsey Graham becomes the 9th Republican to declare a 2016 bid. Secretary John Kerry is flying back to Boston after suffering a major injury in Europe. And Caitlyn Jenner introduces herself to the world on the cover of Vanity Fair. But first, did Rand Paul just hold a campaign rally on the Senate floor? It's Monday, June 1st, and this is Now.
Are we so frightened that we're willing to give up our freedoms?
Time has run out on key national security agency powers.
No one knows what danger will come.
In a sense, it's frightening.
Senator Rand Paul led the charge.
Are we willing to really trade liberty for security?
We shouldn't be disarming unilaterally. That's a totally unacceptable outcome.
This really did bear open the huge schism in the Republican Party.
Some of them, I think, secretly want there to be an attack on the United States so they can blame it on me.
Well, I don't think I know any red-blooded American or any member of Congress who actually wants an act of terror to be carried out.
I've run for president twice, but I would never stoop to something like this.
Do you think you accomplished something tonight, sir?
Yeah, the government's bulk collection of records is going to end.
Today, for the first time in 14 years, the NSA cannot collect the phone data of Americans without first getting a subpoena, but only for the next day or so. After allowing key parts of the Patriot Act to expire, the Senate reconvened this afternoon to consider changes to a different bill, one that curbs the government's ability to collect the phone data of millions of Americans. A final vote on that bill, the USA Freedom Act, could take place as soon as tomorrow. But what started as a fierce debate on government surveillance has evolved into an even fiercer debate for the soul of the Republican Party. Senator Rand Paul, who single-handedly forced the expiration of these key Patriot Act provisions and is running for president, he represents one wing of his party, a wing that is not particularly popular in the Senate GOP. This is what happened on the Senate floor yesterday.
Mr. President, Mr. President, I have not yielded the floor. Mr. President?
Yes. Mr. President, I want the regular order, and I want to ask if the senator would do a question.
Mr. President,
Senator from Kentucky should learn the rules of the Senate.
I'd be happy to yield to the senator from Arizona for a question.
Maybe the senator from Kentucky should know the rules of the Senate.
Yikes. To his detractors, Senator Paul had this to say.
People here in town think I'm making a huge mistake. Some of them, I think, secretly want there to be an attack on the United States so they can blame it on me.
Although Senator Paul is not backing down on his stance on government surveillance, he did walk back that comment today.
In the heat of battle, I think sometimes hyperbole can get the better of all of us. I think we need to have an intelligent debate, and sometimes hyperbole gets the better of us. I think it's the best way to do it.
Joining me now is Oregon's Democratic Senator, member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Ron Wyden. Senator Wyden, thanks for joining me. A lot of action up there on Capitol Hill. Is the USA Freedom Act going to pass?
Yes, and the bottom line is today, and I have been working to close this program for almost a decade, a program that does not make us safer and compromises our liberties is closed as of today. Now, I will tell you, a lot of us have been working on this for close to a decade. Senator Paul has come to the Senate more recently, but he has been a very constructive ally in this effort, and I've appreciated what he's done.
Some people say that if this USA Freedom Act was going to always be the thing that passed, what exactly has Senator Paul done?
Well, first of all, the real question is what the majority leader has done. And in effect, my view is that he has reaped what he sowed. I mean, he could have begun this debate a long time ago, but he chose to, in effect, begin the debate after the House of Representatives went home. And my sense is that he felt that the old pattern of just waiting until the very last minute, everyone, of course, understands it's a dangerous time, and he thought everyone would just blink. This time, it was different.
Well, how comfortable are you with the notion of phone companies holding the metadata? Is that measurably better than the U.S. government holding American consumer metadata?
That is the way it always traditionally was. In effect, you would, on an individual basis, with a court order, or if you had emergency circumstances, target someone who represented a real threat to our country. What we've had for a number of years now is a program, and this has been documented by independent anti-terror authorities is something that doesn't add any value beyond what those traditional approaches would have taken. And at the same time, it really sets up a federal human relations database. When the government knows who you called, when you called, and often where you called from, it's got a lot of private information about innocent Americans.
Senator Wyden, is this the tip of the iceberg? A Foreign Policy magazine argues that Congress has tended to a paper cut, speaking of Section 215 of the Patriot Act, while it ignored the internal bleeding, that there are other provisions that are much more deleterious to American civil liberties, including the 2008 FISA Amendment Act, which monitors non-citizens living within the United States, and Executive Order 12333, which is the surveillance of overseas communications of non-citizens. Is this the beginning of a robust debate around all of those things?
It's sure high time, and I can tell you we consider the fight to have just begun. For example, I've already filed amendments to close the backdoor search loophole. That's Section 702 of FISA. When you target someone who's a threat overseas, you also ought to be concerned about whether Americans are going to get swept up in those searches, have their emails read. I propose closing that backdoor search loophole. Another major issue deals with encryption, when in effect you have encoded somebody's data and messages. Now you have the FBI director actually suggesting that the government should require that companies build weaknesses into their products so as to overcome encryption. I'm going to be fighting hard on those issues, and I also point out that Congressman Jason Chaffetz and I want to make sure that government agencies don't turn everybody's cell phones into tracking devices.
We look forward to that debate. Senator Ron Wyden, thanks as always for your time.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the chairman of the Slate Group, Jacob Weisberg, senior editor at The New Republic, Jamil Smith, and communications director for Emily's List, Jess McIntosh. Thank you guys for joining me from so far away. All right. Hi. Are you in the same time zone, Jake? I think it's an hour earlier where you are. But to the question of, the national debate that we're supposed to be having over surveillance, is this it? Are we having it? Are we living in a moment that a lot of people have been calling for? Or is this a flash in the pan?
Part of the problem with this issue, Alex, is you have these fundamental principles about freedom and privacy and surveillance, but it ends up being couched in very technical questions around, how the bulk data collection works, and people can't be expected to understand that. You have to know who to trust.
Right.
I'm the guy I trust, Ron Wyden. Really.
That guy's the dude you trust.
That is the dude. He is the guy who has paid the most attention to this, who has been a solid civil libertarian, but who understands the security issues. I happen to think Rand Paul's kind of right about this, but I don't trust him. Right. He just happens to be right. Ron Wyden is the person to trust.
And I don't know that Rand Paul has burnished his credentials in terms of trustworthiness by going out and saying there are some people out there who maybe want a terrorist attack to happen so they can blame it on me. I mean, to suggest that anybody on Capitol Hill or in America wants another terrorist attack for any reason.
I mean, that's the third rail of something that you say, is to suggest that somebody actually wants that attack. But Rand Paul does this consistently. He is absolutely willing to sublimate an issue for his own ambition. I mean, this story, when I read everything about it this morning, this story is about him using the Senate floor to campaign for president.
Well, but I mean, doesn't everybody do that to some degree?
No, I mean, everybody talks about the work that they do in the office that they hold when they're running for the next office.
Right.
Yes, but everybody does not say from their presidential campaign, take a selfie of yourself watching C-SPAN while I filibuster-ish on the floor.
Shamelessness.
And then the campaign actually put out video from the Senate floor, which is just straight up illegal.
Right.
That's just
everybody tried talking for 10 hours. I can't imagine what will come out of my mouth after 10 hours. A lot worse than that.
Yeah. But I will say, I mean, and I absolutely, Ron Wyden has been active on this issue for a long time, but Rand Paul has, he has been shameless in his self-promotion around it, but he has made it an issue in large part because he's broken with the ranks of the elders in his party, Jamil, and he is taking a stand there. And if there's anything meaningful to come out of this self-aggrandizing behavior, we're having this debate. Like, like maybe we wouldn't.
That's exactly the word I was going to use to describe it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, though, I think we're really going to learn out of this is just how poorly Republicans govern. And so the biggest thing that I took out of this is not necessarily Rand Paul getting on a soapbox, but the fact that Mitch McConnell is very bad at his job.
Yeah, that's a huge. That's a second-day story of this story is that this all happened to Mitch McConnell, who came in not wanting any of this kind of rabble-rousing to happen.
Right, and then he sends everyone off for a week on vacation, and he basically completely sabotaged himself. So if you open the door for Rand Paul, Rand Paul is the kind of guy that does things like this. That he has this issue at the forefront, possibly of his campaign. I mean, that's really.
Well, can you run a campaign on this though? I mean, will this be enough to keep him?
I think it's something that is probably his most visible issue. I mean, you can't run a campaign on getting, closing down prisons. I mean, that's not something that's going to drive people to the vote, to voting. But if you talk about
not in a Republican primary,
right? Exactly.
Well, right,
but if you talk about, everyone's heard of Edward Snowden. Everyone's heard of what Edward Snowden, revealed. And if you're talking about putting that at the forefront of the presidential debate, I think that
I just wonder, Jake, if you think in a presidential primary, this is something that puts Rand Paul in good stead among members of the Grand Old Party. Yeah,
he's an outsider. He's sort of a Republican Ralph Nader, right? I mean, the gap between Rand Paul and Dick Cheney, or the gap between Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, the one senator who's endorsed him because they're from the same state, is bigger than the gap between any two figures in the Democratic Party, bigger than the gap between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton,
for sure. But I will say, Jess, I mean, the problem with Rand Paul is he's not consistent. I mean, he goes out there and talks about drones and then sort of makes an exception for drones used in criminal domestic cases. Or with this, even today or yesterday, I believe, he said he would, instead of this mass blanket surveillance state, he would hire 1,000 new FBI agents to track people in the United States. If you're a libertarian, the hiring of 1,000 new FBI agents does not assuage your fears about an overlord government.
He's going to give them very powerful magnifying glasses.
I don't think that Edward Snowden and collection of metadata is enough to run a presidential campaign on, but possibly libertarian principles would be, only he just keeps undermining them whenever he absolutely has to in order to get the Republican nomination. So I don't know what Rand Paul runs on other than Rand Paul, but every time we give
just sort of nebulous
Rand Paul
crowd.
But every time we give him a platform, he says something ridiculous, like people are hoping America is attacked by terrorists, or he shushes reporters
and then has to walk that back for the next day.
So even the Rand Paul cloud isn't going to do it for him. He's just not that charming, it turns out.
Sometimes cumulonimbus. It changes shape, that cloud.